Welcome to Autism ADHD TV with Holly. That's me, a neurodivergent therapist, mom, and passionate advocate for affirming approaches. Maybe you're a parent trying to support your neurodivergent child or teen, a therapist or educator wanting to learn more, or you're a neurodivergent person looking for strategies that truly honor who you are. Whatever brought you here, you're in the right place. We talk about the real stuff: emotional regulation, self-awareness, executive functioning, self-advocacy skills that build confidence, social connections that are authentic, and so much more. And hey, if you're looking for deeper learning, check the description notes below for information on my parent workshops and continuing education trainings for therapists. You're going to love it. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and give us a like so you never miss out. And if you find Autism ADHD TV helpful, please share it with someone, because together we can create more understanding about neurodiversity. Now let's get into it. Welcome back, Laura Kirby, to the Autism ADHD podcast.
Thank you, Holly. Thank you for having me. It's lovely to be back.
You are a regular now.
I know. It's fantastic. I love it.
I love it too. I'm going to introduce you. Laura Kirby is a neurodivergent adult, parent, and professional. She has worked within the specialist education sector for over 21 years and is the founder of Positive Assessment Support and Training PAST and co-founder of Kite Therapeutic Learning Services. Laura has a special interest in pathological demand avoidance, PDA, and is the author of the book, The Educator's Experience of Pathological Demand Avoidance, which is published by Jessica Kingsley Publishing and illustrated by Eliza Freaker. She recently published The Teen's Guide to PDA, and that's actually what we're talking about today. PDA is tough, not only for the child or teen, but parents, educators, and those around the person wanting to support them and not quite knowing how to. You have been such a wealth of knowledge for the rest of us who really want to support kids and teens with PDA in the best ways possible. Thank you so much for that.
Pleasure.
Yeah, today we're talking specifically about teens with PDA. Teenagers, they're already tricky. We've all been there. It's a hard time of life.
Yeah. And I actually start the book by saying that. I explain in the book that being a teenager is difficult for anybody. Your body is changing internally and externally. You've got hormones raging through it, and the pressures of education change, and you're trying to figure out who you are. You're trying to figure out your sexuality, all of these things. You're not quite a kid, but you're not an adult, yet. And it's a tricky time. And then you throw neurodiversity in the mix, particularly PDA, and it can become a really challenging time. And one of the things that I felt was really missing for teenagers with a PDA profile was a book, a guide that could help them. The idea from the book actually came from my lovely friend and co-worker, Dr. Julia Willett, who's a clinical psychologist, and we do lots of assessments together. And just after the educator's book came out, she said to me, Laura, you need to write something like this for teenagers. She said, because we just don't have anything that we can signpost them to. So yeah, that's how the idea for the book started. But particularly, as you said, Holly, recognizing what a challenging time it is for any teenager anyway to go through this period of life.
There's so many different parts, finding yourself, figuring this out. But these teens are going to be even more likely to be misunderstood by others, which puts a whole nother layer of stress and anxiety on.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I say that in the book, as a teen with PDA, people probably sometimes think that you're being difficult or defiant or rude, or you feel like you're disappointing people because You'll say that you want to do something with a friend or your family or a partner, and then because your anxiety hits you, your demand avoidance means that doing those things is overwhelming. And I think one of the really important parts of the PDA profile that people have to understand is that not doing things is down to anxiety, and it is can't, not won't. But I think a lot of teenagers not understood properly, teenagers PDA, sorry, are not understood properly. So people think, oh, they're not doing it, and I've put all this, parents will say, I've put all this effort into planning this thing for them to do, or I've spent my money on this hobby or this gift for them, and now they don't want it anymore. And then the poor teenager with PDA gets accused of being ungrateful. And again, it's just so important to understand that it's anxiety that's driving it, and the PDA is so acutely aware of the impact of their demand avoidance on other people as well.
And it is hard to explain those things. Another great thing about this book is teaching the teen about themselves.
Yeah. Helping them to feel less alone. So I'm really excited about this book, and I think this book is really special. And when I've got my copy, because we get sent copies before they're published, and I spent an evening just reading through it again, and I felt almost quite emotional. I was like, wow, this book's going to be really helpful. And that is not because of what I have written. Okay. The reason that this book is so amazing is because I have got contributions and quotes from amazing teenagers with PDA who helped me with this book. And their quotes and their insight, coupled with Eliza's amazing illustrations, make this book so powerful. And I honestly hope that if a teenager does want to read it, and that's the point, you won't be able to make your teen with PDA read this book, by the way. If you're a parent, you're thinking, oh, good, I'm going to buy this book and make my teen read it. You won't be able to because they're PDA. But honestly, if one teenager does read this book and looks at all the amazing quotes from the other teenagers with PDA and thinks, wow, that's me, that's how I feel. It's not just me. I'm not weird. I'm not broken. I'm not useless. I'm not lazy. It will be worth, it will just be worth it. So that's why I'm so excited about this book, because I think it will just give these teenagers the level of understanding about themselves, and it will make them feel hopefully less alone and really empowered as well.
Once we better understand ourselves and can step back from all the noise, thinking that, like you said, we're lazy, we're bad, we're difficult, we're disappointing people.
Yeah, absolutely. And constantly having those feelings will constantly compound your anxiety as well. So the more your anxiety has been compounded, the higher the demand tolerance will become, the harder demands will be. So it can set up quite a really vicious circle in terms of, like you say, mental health, self-worth, self-esteem, all of those things that are so important and are so fragile as you navigate those teenage years.
And when you use quotes from other teens, that's so perfect because it's hearing this information from other people who get it that are your age. None of us want to feel alone. None of us want to. I see how hard it is already for parents feeling alone in their parenting, and teens even more, because how do they find people like them?
Yeah, and some of the quotes in the book, they're so powerful. They're quotes, I'll have to see if I can find some, but there's a lovely quote from one of the girls that contributed called Rose. And actually, I had the pleasure of meeting Rose because I did her PDA assessment. Amazing young person. And I'll just read you one of the things she said. She said, finding out I had PDA made me realize I was not a failure. Before getting my diagnosis, it was really hard for me to tell people I had PDA. Sometimes I would feel that people thought I was making excuses. Getting my diagnosis gave me the confidence to tell people I had PDA and help understand me better. So before she felt like a failure, and now she doesn't. And she has been able to share her insight of PDA. So hopefully other teenagers who read this they won't feel like failures because they're not failures. There's nothing wrong with them. This is one of the things I say all the time about neurodivergent individuals. There is nothing wrong with neurodivergent individuals. If they're not thriving and if they're not able to shine or even just cope, it's because there's something wrong with their environment, and the environment includes the people in it that are supporting them. I'm going to read you another one that I just love. And this, again, this is from a young person called Mika. I've had the pleasure of working with Mika for nearly 10 years. And I've known Mika since they were a young person who didn't even have a diagnosis. And they said the fact that people around you don't understand it does not make it any less real. You're not selfish, you're not bratty, you're not lazy, you're not any of the things that they're going to claim. That you are going to be with people. You are going to be people who will understand and sympathize, and there are going to be people who won't. Don't waste your time on the people who won't spend time believing your struggles. And these are quotes from like teenagers that have been through really difficult, traumatic, and challenging times. And the fact that they are now able to share their experiences and help other young people navigate their own journey, I just think it's so powerful.
There is this pattern where they're hearing the same things from people over and over again, right? You're bad, you're lazy, you're making excuses.
Yeah.
I hear the same thing from the kids and teens that come into my office, and no wonder they're feeling depressed and
Yeah.
anxious.
And I think it can set up a self-fulfilling prophecy as well, doesn't it? If everybody around you thinks that you're lazy and you're rude and you're bratty and you're not going to be able to achieve stuff, then why would you try? So I think, again, the young people that contributed to this book, so powerful to hear where they are now, that they have the understanding themselves, and none of them have sugarcoated it and said it's been easy, but they have all just worked so hard on themselves. It did make me laugh actually, because I asked I wanted to put in a little bit of information about the teenagers as well, of like their names, their ages, when they were diagnosed. And Alfie wrote, so basically tell you about Alfie. Alfie's 15. He was diagnosed as autistic when he was 10, and then a year later with PDA. Alfie likes climbing, Dungeons and Dragons, blacksmithing, playing video games, and the family dog. He dislikes large social gatherings, pompous idiots, yogurt, and having PDA. The book is really honest in terms of it's not easy. Alfie is very open about the fact that his PDA has made things incredibly difficult for him sometimes. And he says, well, she didn't have it, but he does. And he has learned so much about what he needs to be able to thrive. So yeah, these young people, the book wouldn't have been worth writing without them. It really wouldn't. Like, that's why I think it's so powerful. And I'm so grateful to those young people, because for some of them it was quite hard. Obviously, their PDA, it wasn't easy to be able to share this information with me. It wasn't easy. I couldn't just do Zooms with them or send them questionnaires. I had to be quite flexible in how I worked with them and got the information. But I'm so grateful to them, because I think it's gonna help so many young people, but not just young people. Like I'm realistic about the fact that it's going to be difficult for a lot of PDAs to read this book. So I believe that this book would also be incredibly useful for parents to get an insight into their teen, and to any professionals that work with PDAs, particularly teens with PDA, to get that insight from them as well. Because the most important thing for anyone with a PDA profile, whether we're talking about supporting them as a parent or supporting them as a professional, is that they feel safe and connected. So the best way to make safe connections with people is to really understand their needs. So, as I say, there are some teens with PDA that will never read this book. It'll be too hard for them because they're demand avoidant. But if the people that love them and work with them can read it and have a better understanding of their needs, then hopefully that would be really helpful for them as well.
If you say, read this book, there is a demand in there, right?
I put something on Facebook a while ago, and a parent went, "Oh, great idea, but how am I going to make my child read it?" I said, "You're not. Don't even try. Don't try and make your child read this book." It even says in the book, if you're reading this book, one thing I know is that you are reading it because you want to. If you didn't want to read it, it would be in the bin or the toilet. We've also made the book really flexible as well. Like you could read, each chapter is very much a standalone chapter. You don't have to read the book as one. You don't have to read one chapter for the next chapter to make sense. We've made the quotes very visible. They stand out from the text. So we've said you might not want to read what I've written. You might just want to look at the quotes from the other teenagers. You might just want to look at the pictures. So hopefully we've made a kind of low demand reading resource as well, because I know that some of the teenagers will find it really hard to read.
We can really benefit from the information and being open to be taught by these teens that were involved in creating this book as parents, as therapists, as educators, and better understanding the anxiety that is coming up for them all the time, because we're constantly asking them to do things.
That message came across so strongly when I was talking to the teenagers, how anxious they feel all the time. And obviously there is a section on anxiety. There is a chapter, on anxiety. And one of the young people who's actually called Eliza, but she's not Eliza Fricker. We've actually got a teen called Eliza who contributed as well. And she was basically saying that if you tell her, don't tell me how to manage my anxiety, because as soon as you tell me how to manage my anxiety, it becomes a demand. She's also very honest in here about the fact that she didn't like the sensation of taking medication for her anxiety because it made her feel out of control. She basically said, and a few of them said, I just need to figure it out myself. So another young person, Annie, she says, if someone tells me or suggests how to manage my anxiety, it doesn't always help. It helps me more to be left and to figure it out myself. Now, I think, again, as a parent or as a professional, if you know that you've got a client or a child that's really struggling, your instinct is to do whatever you can to support, to make suggestions. And I think, again, reading that might give a parent or a professional the kind of confidence to actually be able to take a step back and give the teenager that they're supporting the autonomy and the freedom that they need to figure it out. So again, there's so many really important messages that have come from all these quotes from all these amazing young people.
And that is a different way of looking at it too, is when as parents or educators or therapists, when we see someone struggling, we want to step in and support them, but maybe that's not how they need us to support them, and being open again to being educated by the teen, because they need to be the ones that tell us what they need when they need it. Sometimes, not everyone, but sometimes, especially with teens with PDA. So really being supportive and letting them decide. You tell me if you would like me to suggest something.
Yeah.
Or let me know how I can make this a safer space for you.
Yeah, exactly. And always respecting and understanding not only the significant level of anxiety that a teen with PDA is going to be experiencing all the time, but also really respecting their autonomy and their need to be able to figure things out for themselves sometimes, which actually I think a lot of teenagers, not just teens with PDA, would benefit from anyway. I've been saying for a long time that I think that the way that we support individuals with PDA, when it's based on trust and connection and respect, actually isn't that the way that we should be supporting all young people anyway? So I feel like the stuff that the teenagers in the book are saying is like a bit of a guiding light in terms of how we can support any of our teenagers.
If there's a safe person, that teen with PDA is going to feel more comfortable saying what they need. Because they'll be heard instead of just being criticized.
Yeah. So we put in the book as well, there's a spoken in the book about relationships, and we divided that up. So there's a chapter on families, so the relationships that teens have with their parents, with their siblings. There's also a chapter on friendship and a chapter on relationships as well. And within those sections, we've made suggestions of like assertiveness techniques that the teens can use if they want to explain why something isn't working for them, or why they need their parents to back off or not tell them to go and have a shower, all of those things. So we've given some suggestions of how they can communicate those things in a very kind of like a low demand way. So I hope, again, hopefully those will be helpful. But again, as a parent reading that book, hopefully a parent will pick up on that and go, actually, I shouldn't be telling my teenager to just go and have a shower. I'm reading this. I hopefully they will now understand like how telling someone to go and have a shower can make them feel incredibly anxious, and that actually there are other ways to communicate as families. It shouldn't just all be coming from the teen in terms of the change of communication. It should be other people communicating in a sort of different way as well. Communication's two-way, isn't it? Those strategies will be helpful for those kind of situations as well.
Yeah, especially because you'll hear a lot of times and your parents and teens will say, we're always arguing or fighting.
And we've normalized that a little bit in the book as well. We've normalized the fact that there's no such thing as a perfect family. Like families do argue, that's normal. Like siblings will go through phases when they just can't stand each other and can't bear to be in the same room. And again, I think one of the challenges for not just PDAs, but for neurodivergent people, because of things like rejection sensitivity disorder, sorry, dysphoria, is that they will often put the blame on themselves for those things. Oh, I just don't get on with my parents, or I just don't get on with my brother. But again, we have tried to normalize that a little bit through one, talking about the fact that all families argue sometimes. There's no such thing as the perfect family. But also, there's a chapter on rejection sensitivity dysphoria to help teens understand that actually sometimes the way that other people are communicating with them may not be intended the way that it is. It may sound like harsher or more fierce than they intended it to be. And we've talked about that a lot in the section on friendships as well. If you message a friend and they don't message back, your RSD will kick in and you'll think, oh, they hate me now, or they're out with other friends and they haven't invited me. So explaining RSD and helping them think, hopefully try and think differently. There's a lovely illustration that Eliza's done of somebody looking at, hopefully it'll come up on the thing. So he's gaming and the PDA is calling him, and the person gaming is thinking, oh, cool, I'll text them back when I finish this game. So again, it's like those illustrations I think are so powerful in terms of helping PDAs figure it out for themselves, but also just hopefully learn to think a little differently sometimes, because those negative thinking patterns that we can get into when we're neurodivergent can be really damaging.
And I can see why that happens so often, because it's a combination of that's your brain's first story, and
Yeah.
also because it's happened so many times.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, this is something that I always say as a neurodivergent teenager growing up, thank goodness we didn't have mobile phones then, because I would have been, and my RSD would have been off the scale if I'd been texting friends or boyfriends and they weren't texting back straight away. I was like, I'd have been like, ooh, they hate me now. And what I recognized actually when I was a teenager is that made me quite needy. It made me like text. I would have been texting more, calling more. So, there's some really great examples in here of, again, just we use the analogy of a smoke detector, which I also spoke about in the educator's book, that when you have PDA, you're like a smoke detector, but it's so sensitive that it goes off if somebody walks past your house smoking a cigarette. So again, there's a lovely illustration of that. So, again, talking about the fact that if you think somebody is shouting at you or angry with you, maybe your smoke detector is just being a little bit too sensitive. And if you can visualize that, you can think, oh, maybe they weren't shouting at you, maybe they're just a bit stressed. So again, hopefully helping reframe some of those negative thinking patterns.
I like the way you're describing that too, using the visuals, because
Yeah.
again, we're not telling them, look, you're wrong, or you're the way you're taking this is wrong. It's I'm communicating something and you're absorbing it in the way that you are. So let us have that safe relationship where we can talk through what we're both experiencing and seeing what those differences are. And I like the way you said that because it is very much a big feeling that you're taking on when you feel rejected as a neurodivergent
Mm,
person. And then, of
yeah.
course, that's threatening and a horrible feeling. And then you have a reaction that maybe the other person thinks is too big
Yeah, and then you get accused of being oversensitive or
and dramatic.
overreacting, dramatic. Yeah. And then it just, again, it just creates this vicious circle as well, doesn't it? So, again, another one.
Before we get off, I was hoping you could give us some examples of how kids advocate for themselves at home and at school and some things they could learn from this book.
Yeah. We've put in there some kind of assertiveness techniques. This is in the section on friendships and relationships. So, the example that we've given is the when you, I feel, I need. So we've said, when you change our plans at the last minute, I feel anxious. I need you to try and give me a bit more notice, please. Or another one would be the fact, sympathy, solution technique. So I'm autistic or I have PDA. I find noisy clubs really overwhelming. I know you enjoy going to these places, but could we meet before you go to the club that's a little bit quieter, please? We also have put in a section on boundaries as well. I know as a neurodivergent adult now, like my boundaries have not been good in my life. And I have spent a lot of time with, particularly with friendships and sometimes relationships, putting other people's needs before my own. We've talked about that it's okay to say no sometimes. You don't have to say yes. And that, again, being very honest about the first time you say no to people, it can feel a little bit uncomfortable, particularly if you're a real people pleaser, which, again, so many neurodivergent individuals are. So we've given some examples of boundaries that people can use, not taking on other people's problems if they weigh you down too. You could say something like, I understand you're having a hard time and I want to be there for you. I don't have the emotional capacity to listen to you just now. Or it makes me feel uncomfortable when you touch or whatever. If you can't respect my space, I'll have to leave. So we've given some examples of how to advocate. We've also talked about spoon theory as well in the book. And I know that not everybody likes spoon theory. We've said you don't have to use spoons, you can use something different. But I think explaining the concept of spoon theory in terms of being able to self-advocate, being able to manage your energy as well, your social energy, could also be really helpful. So we've put lots of examples in the book that hopefully it will become a little bit of a toolkit. We're not saying you have to use all these strategies. We're not saying that everything's going to work for everybody, but because we've put like lots of examples in, coupled with illustrations and these incredible quotes from our other teams about what's helped them, that hopefully there will be some stuff that teenagers reading it will be able to pick out and think, oh yeah, that might help me. I can give that a go.
I like that because therapists and educators and parents, right, can also give it a go and
Yeah,
see how that works. I love that.
yeah,
Thank you so
definitely.
much, as always, for coming on. This is so
My
helpful.
pleasure.
I will make sure to put the link to the guide in the show notes. I am getting my copy. I know I'm really excited about it.
Good. Well, I
So
hope you enjoy it.
tell our watchers and listeners how they can learn more about your other books and then also your services.
Yeah, so the Educator's Experience of PDA came out last year. That's also published by JKP. You can get it on the JKP website, you can get it on Amazon. That is my experiences, good and bad, of working with amazing learners with PDA. And I always say I learnt so much more from my mistakes and my bad experiences. That the experiences were bad because I made them bad, by the way, because I wasn't using the right approaches. So that book is just filled with lots of like anecdotes of my experiences of working with these amazing young people. I'm currently I've finished the Late Woman's Guide to ADHD, which will be published next year, and that is again that's got lots of quotes from other late diagnosed and late identifying women with ADHD. It's a very different book to the first two. It's been very difficult to write. I've had lots of demand avoidance about it, but I've finally, I think, got a finalized manuscript now. So that's out next year. And Eliza and I are going to be writing together 2 new books over the summer, which are just going to be really simple guides to PDA. So one is going to be for children who want to learn more about PDA, whether they've got a brother or a sister with PDA. And then one is going to be for parents and professionals. And then in terms of my services, I do assessments. So if you're listening in the UK, we do autism, demand avoidance, PDA and ADHD assessments. And I also do one-to-one consults with parents as well. If parents have got any kind of concerns or want to learn more about their child's profile, then I absolutely love doing consults. And then I also do a lot of training as well. So I do lots of training in schools and colleges, and can do those in person or online.
That is so exciting. Again, thank you for coming on, and thank you for your continued work for children and teens with
Pleasure.
PDA.
I love doing it. It's my pleasure.
Take care. That's a wrap on today's episode. If you found this helpful, please consider hitting that like button and subscribe so you don't miss anything. And if you're thinking, oh, I know somebody who would really appreciate this episode, please send it on to them. Also, don't forget, go down to that description below because I have loaded it with free resources and information on my parent workshops and continuing education trainings for therapists. Everything you need to keep learning and growing. Thank you for being here, for caring, and for choosing neurodiversity affirming approaches. I look forward to seeing you next time on Autism ADHD TV. Take care.
All content provided is protected under applicable copyright, patent, trademark, and other proprietary rights. All content is provided for informational and educational purposes only. No content is intended to be a substitute for professional medical or psychological diagnosis, advice, or treatment. Information provided does not create an agreement for service between Holly Blanc Moses Crossvine Clinical Group, the interviewee, Holly Blanc Moses LLC, and the recipient. Consult your physician regarding the applicability of any opinions or recommendations with respect to your symptoms or medical condition, or the symptoms or medical condition of your family member. Children or adults who show signs of dangerous behavior toward themselves and/or others should be placed immediately under the care of a qualified professional.